Good morning once again as we continue our new sermon series called Imperfect Family. And I want to welcome those of you who are joining us online and are part of our online campus. We're glad that you're with us as well. And we would like the opportunity to get to know you better. So if you would, go ahead and sign in on the black registration pads at the end of your rows. Just go ahead and pass those down, and there's an opportunity for you to register online as well. Well, as we continue this series, we've been looking at how each of our families are imperfect to some degree. While some of us may have perfect families, most of us have imperfect families. And we're diving right into that tension between the real, what we experience in our families, and the ideal, what we would hope for our families, what we wished our families were like, what our dream for our families are, what our expectations are. And we're going to kind of look at really how we might begin to live out this tension between the real and ideal. What is it that God would call our family to, our less than perfect family? How might we experience God in the midst of that? And part of what we're doing is we're looking at different families that are on TV shows, movies, those kind of things. And we're also going to be looking at different biblical families. Because basically, I think we'll all feel a little bit better about our families when we do that. But also, I think we'll see how God can actually call and use imperfect families, because the Bible is full of imperfect families. In fact, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to find an example of a perfect family in Scripture. And yet, God used their families to do amazing things, to carry forward the message of salvation and grace to which we have here today. And I believe that God still uses our families. And our families are incredibly diverse. We have blended families and patchwork families. We have kind of the traditional or the nuclear family. We have families that have adoption and foster care. We have families who are single, and maybe we're still students or youth, or maybe we're just starting off in life and we're single, or maybe we're single again, and maybe we're single with children. Whatever our families might look like, whether we're empty nesters or we're raising our grandkids, each of us have a very unique experience of family. So how might God use each and every one of our families? So our main idea is this, that our families are not meant to be perfect, but our families are meant to be a place where we experience and practice the perfect love of God. That's what our families can be. And so today I want to look at a story from Luke chapter 24. And so as you go ahead and turn in your scriptures, you can turn in your YouVersion, or if you bought a Bible here today, or maybe on your Bible app, we'll also have it on the screen. But Luke chapter 24, starting in verse 28. It says this: When they came to Emmaus, he acted as if he was going on ahead. But they urged him, saying, "Stay with us. It's nearly evening and the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. And after he took his seat at the table with them, he took the bread, he blessed it, and he broke it and gave it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. But he disappeared from their sight. And they said to each other, "Weren't our hearts on fire when he spoke to us along the road and when he explained the scriptures for us?" And they got up right then and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. And they were saying to each other, "The Lord has risen. He appeared to Simon." And then the 2 disciples described what had happened along the road and how Jesus was made known to them as he broke the bread. Well, today I want to talk to you about what I believe could be the most powerful, impactful one thing. How's that for a bit of hyperbole? But the one thing that I believe can really revolutionize your family experience. And that is if you would eat together. I believe that one thing can change your family and the experience of family and the type of family you have if you would eat together. Now, this could be one of those things where it's simple but not easy. I mean, if there's ever a kind of thing that could be the ideal family experience or this kind of ideal moment or this dream of families, and that is that we would actually gather around a table and eat together. That could be one of those kind of experience. I mean, maybe, something out of a Norman Rockwell kind of painting. I mean, it's nostalgic, it's idealistic, it's not our experience of families anymore, because the reality is that we're busy. And we're busier than we ever have been. We have pressures and demands, and people have access to us 24/7, whether we like it or not. We have so much going on with practices, rehearsals, sports, work, different demands, all these pressures. And that's a reality. So the reality is that the table can be a luxury experience in our homes and in our families. I mean, most of us probably eat, when we kind of think about it, if we eat 21 meals in a week, or maybe we eat even more than that most of those could actually be eaten in our car. And I know that because on Mondays I go to Chick-fil-A, and there's at least 20 people in the drive-thru line whenever I go at 11:30, right? I mean, all of these people are probably eating sandwich and nuggets in their car, right? I mean, oftentimes I'll ask Brandy, hey, what'd you eat today? And she says, I was too busy. I didn't get a chance to eat, which I don't understand at all. So even if I'm eating in the car, I'm not missing a meal. But when we do get that opportunity to sit down at a table, oftentimes it kind of looks like this.
Here you go. Guys, breakfast. Guys, Phil. Hello.
Totally with you. Kids, put your dishes in the dishwasher.
Okay, no, that's it. Everybody, gadgets down now.
Why are you freaking out?
Because you're also involved with little gizmos. Nobody is even talking. Families are supposed to talk. What are you doing that's so important?
Oh, I'm locking in my fantasy roster. I'm unbeatable. We're totally getting an above-ground pool.
Die, stupid, die.
Luke, I told you to put that down. Now, come on, buddy.
1 second. About to beat Dad's record.
You heard your mother.
What is so funny?
Nothing.
Mom's insane. Thank you, Haley.
At least we talk.
Hello?
That's what our families can look like when we actually do get the chance to gather around the table. And our tables can be complicated when we have the slacker or the drama queen or the drama king or the inappropriate jokester all at our table, or the new boyfriend or girlfriend or the newer boyfriend and girlfriend. I mean, our tables can be that complicated. In Genesis chapter 27, we have the story of Isaac and Rebekah and their twin sons, Jacob and Esau. And they had quite an experience around food. And as the story kind of picks up, it tells us at the end of Genesis chapter 6 that Esau had taken 2 wives, which we're not going to talk about today, but he had taken 2 wives among the Hittite women. And in one translation, it says that they are thorns in the side of Isaac and Rebekah. So I'm sure none of us have ever had an experience like that in our family. But as it begins with the story that Isaac is getting old in age and he's losing his sight, and he's determining that it's time for him to go ahead and pass on his estate to the eldest son, Esau. And in those days, they didn't have lawyers and wills and things like that, so they would give a blessing. And they had a large family. They had servants. They had animals. They had people under their care. And so he would actually pass all of this on so that Esau would be in charge. But it tells us that Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And these were twin boys that even as they were born, it says that they were at war within their mother's womb. And as they were born, that Esau was born first and that Jacob was clutching his heel as he came out. And these boys could not be more different. Esau was an outdoorsy kind of guy. He would love to hunt, and he spent all of his time outside. But Jacob was kind of the indoors sort of guy, the sensitive one, the one that would read poetry and cook and things like that. And so these boys were completely different. But on this time, Isaac says to Esau, it's time for me to give you my blessing and to pass on the family to you. So won't you go out, hunt, cook something for me and bring it back, and I'll give you my blessing. And Rebekah overheard this. And so she went to Jacob and she says, I want you to have the blessing. So here's what we're going to do is you're going to go into your father. He doesn't see too well anyway. And he's going to go ahead and give you the blessing. I'm going to cook up a meal for you and you take that in. And that was their plan. So while Esau is out hunting, Rebekah slaughters a couple goats and she takes the goat hair and put it on Jacob so that he's just like Esau. Cooks him a meal and he goes in to Isaac. And Isaac comes in and he says, wow, that didn't take very long. And Jacob says, well, the Lord has provided. I'm here with a meal. And so he comes in and he says, would you sound a little bit like Jacob? Are you sure you're not Jacob? And he says, no, I'm Esau. He's like, come and feel my arms. You can feel that they're hairy. You smell me. Don't I smell like a kind of person who would be outside? And he says, oh, well, you must be Esau. And so he eats and gives him his blessing. Just as Esau is coming in from the hunt and has made a meal and he brings it into him, and Isaac says, but I've just passed on the blessing to your brother. And Esau is angry, and he vows to kill his younger brother. And so Rebekah goes to Jacob, and she says, you got to flee from here. Go to your uncle Laban's house and stay there until all this blows over, until your brother gets over it, right? She says, just go over, it'll blow over a little bit, and then you can come back home. And then Rebekah goes in to Isaac, and she says, well, I've sent Jacob off because really we can't have any more Hittite women in this family. So that's pretty much how that story ends, an imperfect family moment. But even though our family moments and our tables are oftentimes imperfect, the reality is that the tables are the central way in which we are formed into the image of Jesus. And Jesus loved tables. Because as you read the stories, you oftentimes find Jesus is eating with the most unlikely people, with the sinners, with the outcasts, with those no one else would eat with the sick, the lame. Jesus would eat with them, and people would criticize him and say, why are you eating with these people? And it was at a table in which Jesus was invited, and he goes in and makes this great observation that would be good for any one of us. And he says, whenever you're invited to a table, don't sit at the head of the table, but take your place at the end of the table in case someone with more honor comes and the guest asks you to move. But instead, sit at the end of the table. So when the head of the table comes, they can invite you forward. And then he says, don't throw dinner parties for the kind of people that you would want to come, those that would invite you back, but throw parties for those who could not invite you back to their table. Throw parties for the least of these. It was at a table where Jesus was eating, where a woman, an outcast, comes and brings this alabaster jar and pours it over his head, anointing him. And the people at the table said, doesn't he know what kind of woman this is? And yet he's letting her pour this perfume on him and wipe his feet. And Jesus says to them, to those who much is forgiven, much love is shown. It was at a table that Jesus says this is the picture of heaven. That heaven is like a table in which a king throws a party and invites everyone who would come and have the feast. It was at a table that Jesus gives us our central image of grace and love as he broke the bread. And he says, this bread is my body and this cup is my blood, broken for you, shed for you, so that you might know God. And it was at a table on this day where Jesus was demonstrating that he had conquered the grave. In Luke chapter 4, we have the story of the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. And as they're walking and they're beginning to talk about these events and how they had followed Jesus and they thought that he was the Messiah, the one who was going to rescue them and save them. And yet Jesus was crucified and their dream had died. And yet this man comes alongside them and asks what's been going on. And they said, don't you know? Don't you know the events of the last couple of days? And he begins to tell them. And then this man begins to share scriptures with them and show how the Messiah had to die. And they're so intrigued, they say, well, won't you just stay for dinner and we can continue this conversation? And so Jesus does, and they don't recognize him. But at that table, Jesus breaks the bread, and their eyes are opened. And when they go and report everything to the other disciples, they said, Jesus was made known to them as he broke the bread. Jesus believed the table was central to our lives as disciples. And modern research confirms this as well. The National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University released a study in which they studied children, and they said children who eat 5 meals per week, only 5 meals, around a table with their families, are least likely to suffer weight problems, substance abuse problems, have healthier eating habits, and do better academically. And just yesterday in the Dallas Morning News, right on the front page, you don't have to read this first article. This is not an endorsement at all. There is the article about new monasticism. And this is about the homes that we have here all around Dallas, the 8 different monastic communities, these intentional living communities, in which they gather together to share life and share faith. And Justin Hancock is quoted as saying, the meal, the dinner table is the heartbeat of everything that we do as part of the Missional Wisdom Foundation. And we happen to have one of those houses here at Christ United Methodist Church. Our Savannah house has a group of girls, and they're living out a rule of life. They're living out what it is to be a disciple here in the 21st century as young 20s, professionals, working, getting to know their neighbors right here in Plano, right here in an affluent apartment complex. And central to what they do is a Monday evening dinner in which they invite their neighbors. One has been a widow. Others have been people who have moved over from Japan. Those who are new, who are in need of friends, who are lost and lonely. That's who they invite to the table. And you are welcome to that table as well. That all of us can go and eat dinner with them each Monday night, to share prayer, to share a meal, to share conversation, to laugh together, to know that we're not alone. Because I believe the table is God's invitation to a broken, isolated, and lonely world. So how do we rediscover our tables? How do we remove the homework and the computers, the sewing machines, and everything else that gathers on our tables? How do we rediscover them? Well, I believe there's 3 ways that we can approach our tables that I want to share with you. The first one is that we're adaptable. Then when we think about how we could gather together as a family, whatever our family might look like, whoever it is that might be in our house, whether they're roommates, whether they're children, in-laws, whoever it might be in our house, how might we gather around a table? And the first one is that we're adaptable. That no matter what our schedule is, what is a meal that we could gather and share together? Maybe it's breakfast, maybe it is lunch, maybe it's dinner, maybe it's a late night snack, maybe it's a dessert. What would it look like to gather around and share something together? And we find that really around our tables that only about 10 minutes is really kind of 10 minutes of time that's actually kind of content time. That most of the time our dinner tables are filled with, you should eat that, remove your elbows from the table, kind of stuff like that. But even if it's just for 10 minutes, find a time to gather together, to catch up on the day, to share a little bit of our lives, to share about our stories, whatever it might be. Be adaptable. Because sometimes it's not always going to go well. I know a couple years back as we were gathered around the table, we had our children, we have 3 young children, and Brandy and I were there. We were at the table, we began to eat dinner, and we were beginning with prayer, and I think I was praying that night, and I was praying, and then I hear, and I looked over, and Xander had spilt his cup on Brandy, all his drink all over her. And then I was like, dude, what were you doing? We were praying, and he says, well, I wanted a drink. Makes sense. But we were praying, and so we gather everything together, we clean everybody up, we get back at the table, and then Leah, my youngest daughter, goes to get a drink, spills her cup right on Brandy, and then we're just like, all right, we're calling it tonight. Didn't work tonight. We're adaptable. Didn't work. Moving on. Because we're going to have some nights like that, and some nights where it doesn't work, some nights where we can't get everybody together, but make it a habit. Be adaptable. The second thing is that we pray. However you can pray, you pray together. A common question at my table is, Do we have to pray before we eat? Yes, every night. We pray together before we eat. Yes, we're going to pray tonight. But you pray, whatever that might look like. Maybe it's sharing joys and concerns. Maybe it's taking a prayer that you found that you really love printed out. Maybe it's a prayer that somebody sent to you, but you take a moment and you pray together as a family and you connect over that. And finally, the third thing I would encourage you is to talk. To spend some time in meaningful conversation. To share about your day together. To ask the children to share about their day together. Whoever it might be at your table. To share things that are going on in your life. The Huffington Post had an article that I shared on my Facebook that gave 3 great questions, and 2 of them that really stuck with me. And that one of them was, how did you show kindness today? Just ask that question. Begin to unpack it. What does it look like to show kindness? How did you show kindness today? And the third one was completely blanking. How have you failed today? And begin that kind of conversation where we can encourage each other and be the kind of people where we say, it's okay to fail. It's okay to take risks. How did we fail? And that was one that was kind of convicting for me, that I could even start to share those mistakes that I've made, those ways that I fail each and every day, those things that I wish I would have done to help encourage my family. But however it looks, take the opportunity to rediscover your table. Because my encouragement to you is today to eat together as an imperfect family. Take time to eat together. Whether that's inviting somebody new to your table, somebody who needs a table. If you have open chairs at your table, invite somebody to fill them. Or maybe you could go and be part of our Monday night dinner at the Savannah House, to go and find community there if you're in need of a table, or if you want a table, you want to explore a new table, to go and be a part of that. And if you normally eat together as a family, perhaps eat together at least one more time this week than you normally do. Because I truly believe that when you gather around tables, when you eat together, when you share your life together, when you break bread together, that you will discover that Jesus is at your table. Will you pray with me? God, as we come into this room today, as imperfect people, as imperfect families, Lord, we come knowing that we are part of your perfect family, that you invite each and every one of us to your table. And it's nothing that we deserve, God, but it's because of your grace, your love. And God, as we look at these stories about tables and how you ate with the most unlikely people, when you ate with the people that needed to know you, when you ate with people and shared about God's kingdom, Lord, may our tables be a place where we reconnect as a family. May our tables be a place where we encourage and love each other. God, may our tables be a place where we see you, maybe even for the very first time. That our hearts would grow closer to you. That we would see how you are present in our lives and how you are shaping us into the people you're calling us to be. And so, God, today for our tables that are imperfect and not what we would desire, what we would hope, tables that are broken, Lord, we know that you can repair us, that you are the great healer. Lord, it is in you that we place our trust, knowing that you walk with us and that we're not alone. So, Lord, as we gather in this place from so many different places and situations, will you meet us where we are, God, with your perfect love? And it's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.